Welcome to Conversations with Cox and Kielseth, and to be more specific, that is filmmaker Alex Cox and myself, film curator Pablo Kielseth. Alex will join us by phone from his home in Oregon, while I sneak away from my office to call him from one of the projection booths used by the International Film Series, which has been screening foreign and independent movies at CU Boulder since 1941. We will keep our chats to about 20 minutes as we discuss whatever movie-related topics grab our fancy. Thanks for joining us.
Okay, action.
Marvelous. So, Alex, so nice to talk to you again, and I'm especially excited because it sounds like is it true? Will Tod Davies be joining us as well?
Tod Davies?
Hi, Pablo.
And
I guess yes, she will be joining us.
Excellent. So we are talking about, we're going to actually talk about Shirley today. That's a movie directed by Josephine Decker, starring Elizabeth Moss as the famous horror and mystery writer, Shirley Jackson. Michael Stuhlbarg stars as Shirley's husband, the intimidating literary critic Stanley Hyman. And the story unfolds, I think it's got to be some 12, 13 years after she first published her famous short story, The Lottery, back in the New Yorker. And that was in 1948. So I think this is in the mid-60s. And I think we're supposed to know that it's maybe in the last year of her life. This movie screened at the Berlin International Film Festival, and it also won the U.S. Dramatic Special Jury Award at Sundance. It's available to watch at internationalfilmseries.com. And if you click on it, half of the proceeds will go to the IFS and the other half go to the distributor. So it's a nice way it's a nice way to support the independent art house films. All right. So I've seen Shirley and you've seen Shirley. So I'm curious what your take was.
Oh, no. We want to know what yours is first.
Well, I will say that the movie takes a lot of liberties, and I would have like to have known a lot more about Shirley Jackson herself, who, she died when she was pretty young. I think she was 48 from cardiac arrest and, maybe because of weight issues and some heavy smoking, but other issues as well. She dealt with agoraphobia, and her husband was a control freak and prone to infidelity.
It certainly is an extremely unattractive view of academic life. I will say that.
Well, I will tell you, I will say one thing up front that it was just a little bit of a peeve of mine, is that by gum, as a fan of The Haunting of Hill House and as a fan of The Lottery, I really wanted to go straight to a movie about Shirley Jackson. And what the movie does is instead it kind of brings in two other characters, some newlyweds, and we're supposed to see sort of them through. Here's my thing: when I see to bring like Alex, a movie from Alex, like Sid and Nancy. You know what I respect about Sid and Nancy? That's a movie you get right to Sid and Nancy. It's a movie about Sid and Nancy. You go to a movie about Shirley, you really want it to be a whole bunch of Shirley.
Shirley, right. Instead of being Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf with better costumes.
Yeah. I was thinking about that, and I was also thinking a little bit about The Wicker Man, although that's more tangential. Yeah.
I don't think it was meant to be a biopic, Pablo. I mean, that it was definitely not a biopic.
But it is called Shirley.
Well, no, and I think that they did take liberties on purpose. And so I think you're absolutely right that it was not meant to be a biopic, but rather it was meant to kind of capture sort of a place and a feeling, And I think it did those things really well. I really actually liked the end note that was kind of a surprise grace note in a way that was unexpected. So, Tod, you tell me you're an author and you're familiar with Shirley Jackson. So what are some other things that came to mind when you were watching this?
Well, the main thing that came to mind was that this is a pretty standard genre that was dressed up quite beautifully. I will say again, the way I said about The Painter and the Thief, that it's very stylish looking. I mean, we're seeing a lot of stylish looking movies with fabulous. I mean, Alex has something to say about the production in a minute, but in terms of the costumes, in terms of the settings, in terms of, the music was a little weird, but it was supposed to be weird. So that's all extremely stylish. But if you look beyond that, what you're seeing essentially is the traditional story of how an artist uses other people's lives and tragedy to form their own art.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And that's, that's probably not the way she worked, the real person, because actually it isn't the way that authors work. It's the way they work when they're in drama, when they're in a play or something.
Right.
But they don't usually they don't usually sacrifice the lives of the people around them in order to create their art. That's kind of a cliche, and it's kind of bullshit too, I have to say. But, it's very dramatic. But I'll turn it over to Alex because he had some comments.
All right. Well, thanks for joining.
That was interesting what
you
said though about films about writers, because also years ago now, when I was at CU, we watched the Ray Milland movie, the Billy Wilder movie, The Lost Weekend, which is all about, as I had thought, it's all about a writer, who has a drink problem.
Yes, right.
But then I realized he's not a writer at all. He's a kind of a leech and a parasite, who just says he's a writer, so that his friends will leave him alone and respect him, and it's so interesting because of these kind of sort of interesting visions of what a writer's life is like. What really impressed me the most about the film, though, was the lighting, or the absence of lighting. It was as if they had the people that shot the film had gone to like the Clint Eastwood, Bruce Surtees school of interior lighting, because you can't see a damn thing half the time. And that was just the weirdest thing about Eastwood and Surtees when they got into their decadent phase, with some of those cowboy films, is they would just have like the family around the table, establishing their characters before they're killed by the marauders. And you don't even know who they are because you can't see a damn thing because it's so dark.
Wait, which Eastwood movies are you referring to exactly? Just for my own...
I'm thinking of they were all shot by Bruce Surtees, weren't they? And some of the later ones, like Pale Rider and Outlaw Josie Wales, interior scenes are remarkably dark to the extent that you really can't see the faces of the characters within.
Okay. Yeah.
And so it did seem like that's a sort of a strange aesthetic for them to have adopted.
But that was one director, you're saying, right? Or was it several?
That was the look of Clint Eastwood and Bruce Surtees. Remember, Bruce Surtees was his cinematographer.
Gotcha.
For most of his career as a director. I think Surtees might be dead now.
Yeah.
But he was, and they just got into this weird trip where they would everything was so dark. The interiors were so dark that it was like impossible to see what was going on. But it was very highly regarded by the critics.
Well, isn't it, that is a style. I mean, it's chiaroscuro, is that correct? Would that fall in there?
Todd is nodding, so yes.
Okay.
Chiaroscuro.
That's...
Chiaroscuro. Well, no, my Italian's terrible. Why are you handing me the mic?
Va bene. Toddy. Bebe.
So, one thing that, and again, we've already established that the movie is its own thing that takes many liberties. But I thought one thing that was a little curious was that my understanding was that, the real Shirley Jackson and her husband, in terms of like giving dinner parties and socializing with people like Ralph Ellison, the author of Invisible Man. I mean, they were well regarded in terms of giving great parties. And you certainly do not get the impression from watching this movie that Shirley Jackson gives good party.
Boy, would you ever not want to be at a dinner party with these two people? And I'm not giving anything away to say that because that happens in the first 10 minutes of the movie. In the first 10 minutes of the movie, you're sitting there going, just get out of the house, honey. Do not hang out with these people. Really, you are not going to enjoy your life if you hang out with these people. And yet she hangs out with them. It's exactly like and I think that must have been the intent. And also, if you like a good horror film, you're likely to like this too, because it's the same thing. They're sort of monsters. They're portrayed as monsters, Shirley and her husband. They are.
But they're interesting monsters because I do feel that the ending is supposed to give you the sense that this newlywed woman has gone through a change, and recognizes and has a moment of mental empowerment. And that was thanks to the transformation of being in the company of these two very gripping personalities. So I don't know.
Well, that makes it a 21st century horror movie.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting because Elizabeth Moss has been in two previous films were just in the last 2 years. She was in the Invisible Man reboot, which was also obviously a horror film. And she was in Us, which is also a horror film. So she's kind of going to the roots somehow of the genre.
She's a really good actor. I got to say, all the acting in this film is really superior.
Yeah, no, I thought that the acting carried the day, and
the husband's great. The second husband does pretty well with what's a pretty thankless part. He does pretty well with it, and of course the young woman's really good, but Elizabeth Moss is fantastic. I mean, it's a tour de force, actually.
And she actually really resembles Shirley Jackson quite a bit if you put the photos side by side.
Huh.
In this bit, so that was there were some very successful parts of this. So I'm glad you both were able to. I know you don't both agree on movies oftentimes, and I'm glad you both saw this one all the way through to the end. And I'm hoping other people will check out.
We'll turn out to support the IFS and do likewise.
Well, they actually will really enjoy it, Pablo. Nobody's going to be disappointed to watch this movie.
Well, this is not a challenging movie, and we sometimes have those, but this is not one of those. And we do have other titles that are available on the website, of course, as well. So,
however, I will warn the audience: if you are engaged to be married to an English professor, probably this is not the right movie to watch.
Or maybe it is.
Or maybe it is. Dump him and go for a film director or somebody who programs the IFS immediately.
Yeah, no, the academia does not look like a safe space in this particular movie. Yeah. You know, and we are speaking of academia, we're getting plans. We're going back to having students on campus, and looks like fall is going to happen with a campus experience for students.
Fingers crossed. Well, that's what you pay for, isn't it? You want to go to campus and hang out with real people. Yeah,
it's going to be there. Nobody really has all the answers as to how it's going to be done, or how rooms are going to be cleaned, or how the social distancing is going to be put into effect when you've got, what are you going to do with those, like in Chem 140 when you had exams with 500 students in a room? I mean, how do you space those out, right? It's a lot of challenges in front of us.
Tents, to pitch tents out there on those sporting stadia and do the exams in tents.
I like tents. That could be a good thing. Yeah. Well, I can even donate a couple.
Exactly. Yeah, that's right. We have a spare tent from I think Build a Galactic Hero.
We have.
Do you remember Alana Murphy? We lost Alana Murphy's tent and had to buy another one, and then we found it again. So you have a tent.
I actually, Alex, Alana's tent is on my back porch right now. And as you know, Meredith's dog passed away a few weeks ago. And so I've been cleaning out the house of all the dog toys and treats. And they are currently in that tent on the back porch as they await people that I can give those things out to.
A suitable dog.
Yes, right. Exactly. So the tent is currently being put to use, but it can maybe be put to use once again with students. So yes, good idea. Oh, I had one last question for you, Todd. What was that term that you had for people who suck up your time? Was it psychic vampires, or what was it?
I don't remember. What did I say? Psychic vampire sex?
No,
I don't know. I mean, I think I have a variety of vivid descriptions whenever someone is describing someone like that to me, but I don't have it attached to a definition in my head, really.
You said that you knew somebody who just exhausted you to the point where you thought you had chronic fatigue, and when you
I was married to him. Yeah, that was terrible.
Hey, how fitting that we should have this conversation in relation to Shirley. But what was the term that you had for him? I thought it was that he was a fill in the blank. It was like 2 words.
I don't know. Psychic suck. I don't know. But I mean, I know the feeling, and I'm sure everybody out there listening knows the feeling when you're in a room with somebody who's just sucking all your energy out.
Yep.
Preying on you. Yeah, well, that was going on a lot in this movie. Boy.
Yeah.
Hoo-ha. Yeah.
Psychic vampire.
I could feel my illness coming back, actually, watching it. Watching the husband, my illness started to come back immediately. Thank you, Alex, for being such a nice husband.
Horrible in different ways.
Alex is, I know what the phrase is that you're looking for. An energy suck.
An energy suck. Yeah.
And Alex is not an energy suck. Anybody looking at Alex knows he's not an energy suck.
No, he gives.
Yeah.
He gives. All right. Well, so delightful to talk to you both, and let's do it again next week.
Looking forward to it. Thank you.
All right. Take care, you two.
Bye-bye.
Yep. Ciao.
And cut. Okay, that's a wrap.
Thanks again for joining Alex Cox and myself today. I'd like to thank Jason Phelps for handling the audio and Ted Thacker for letting us use the intro to his song, The Ballad of Slim Cessna, for the musical cues that bookend these conversations.